Hope the screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Fine. So in the previous class, we just touched upon
Yes, sir.
basic idea behind operating system. Yeah, shall we continue?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So we have observed about what a OS is and where it fits into the computer, and what basically happens when the system is switched on, and what type of roles, responsibilities OS will have. We can see today. So before we get into that, let us look at precisely about what type of computers we have around us, the type of architectures what we have, the type of organization of computers we deal on a day-to-day basis. So let us start today's class with a clear idea of what do you mean by a computer organization or a computer architecture. So this clarity we require with us to keep so that we can understand what, whenever somebody says computer architecture, we can perceive that. So can you throw some light on what is a computer organization or what is computer architecture? Basically, do these two are different? Are they one and the same? Or there is no difference at all? Or will they do make any sense when somebody says computer architecture is this or computer organization is that? So what do you feel about this? Do you find any difference between computer organization or computer architecture per se? Any idea on that?
No, sir.
Yeah, please. What do you mean by computer organization? Or what do you mean by computer architecture? Or any analogy also fine. Let us consider a construction of a house. Fine. You're all well versed with the process that takes place when you want to construct a house. Assume you have a 30-40 site with you. You want to construct a very good building, but you don't know how to have a better building, how to have a better elevation, all those things. So what you do, you consult an architect. What that architect will do, look, you have a 30-40 measurement of land, and in this probably you can construct like this. So probably you can have this dimension kitchen, this dimension restroom, this dimension living room, this dimension portico, and stuff like that. So architect will basically give, in a given measurement of a site, how to construct a particular house. It may look very simple from the end user perspective, that architect might take some 2 hours or 3 hours to give a proper plan. But while doing so, the architect will be keeping so many parameters in mind. What are those parameters? Depending upon the location. If, for example, if you want to construct a house in Bangalore, you are bound by some rules of BDA or BBMP. If you're constructing a house in a village limits, we have something else. If you're constructing in India, it is a different rules. If you're constructing in Dubai, it is different. So based on the location where we are going to construct, the rules and regulations of the land will be different, and these are kept in mind by whom? Not by you as an end user, by the architect. Second, when you want to construct a commercial building, we have different parameters. When you want to construct a residential building, we have some other parameters. We have a buffer zones, we have area to be left. All the so many parameters will be kept in mind, which we as an end users might not be aware of. That means an architect will have a complete knowledge, even legal, financial, all those knowledge, and give some proposition for the value so that you can construct a house at a given site. right? Hope you might have come across this type of examples or experiences. So what is happening precisely at this point of time? An architect of a house will give you a blueprint so that you can realize that house the way you want. Similar to that, a computer architecture is what you want to realize something from your, let us say you are doing some scientific calculation, you are doing a project, you are taking some activity, you require some computing facility. For that computing facility, what type of system is good for you? So computer architecture will deal about what type of requirements of a system is suitable for our process to be completed without any issue. So computer architect, the person who is involved in this particular business of identifying the type of computer what we require is known as a computer architect, and the process is known as a computer architecture. So what do they say? Okay, you want to do a project involving say 500 GB of data every day, so better you go for a 2 terabyte hard drive. Second, they say your volume of data is very huge and you want the reply to be given, so better to go for a minimum 8 GB RAM. And they say you better you have a 2 printers associated as a peripherals, and you better you have a mouse of this category, a keyboard of this category. So they keep giving the idea internally, you better go for a 64-bit machine, you go for this operating system. So like that, they will be giving advice so that we can purchase a system of that category and start working on that. So that is the idea with which a computer architect works, and what is that computer architecture really mean for us. Second, then what is a computer organization? Let us come back to the house again. So the house architect has given a blueprint. Now it is up to us as end user to make sure that that blueprint is used and actual house is realized. What is there in a blueprint is not a house. You cannot go and live there. It is only a blueprint. But using that, you are going to construct your house so that you can live there for next 100 years without any issue. If that is the case, to realize that house, we might have a contractor, you might have a dialogue with them, and you will bring some material, and you can use different material today. I can use different material, or somebody else can use some other material. So material usage is purely up to us. But what is common there? The architect is going to be the constant and common. For that to be realized, you will be using different materials. In the same fashion here, to realize the computer that we have been asked or that we are looking for our requirement, probably we can use different processors, maybe AMD processor, Motorola processor, IA processor, Intel processor. You can use a Seagate hard disk, you can use different mouses, different keyboards. It is up to us, whichever you can bargain and you can identify the best in the market and start using them. So the way you use these peripherals and elements and start realizing a computer is nothing but your computer organization. So we are going to organize them to make sure that a real-time computer is available to you. So that is a key difference between what is a computer architecture and what is computer organization. So precisely, computer architecture deals with the requirements so that a computer can be realized, and actual realization of that computer in real time is nothing but computer organization. Hope it is clear to you, the difference between these two.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, done. Second, so having said that, we have an architecture. Now architectures are totally depending on the technology with which our digital things have come into picture. So we talk about lot of digital electronics. Probably you might have learned about semiconductors, you might have seen about IC chips, you might have seen about integration technologies. All these things are making room for this particular diversified architectures what we see today with computers or digital. We have handheld computers, we have our laptops, we have our desktops, we have workstations, we have very huge systems like our data centers, and we have a thin clients, we have mobile phones too, which we have been using in day-to-day life. All these things are a result of the various inventions that we see in the digital technology, and this is driven by a concept called as a IC, so integrated circuit. That integrated circuit purely depends on the transistors, and these transistors are made of semiconductor technology. So semiconductors are the basic building blocks in order to have any digital media with us. So having said that, how these ICs are coming into picture. So before, if you look at the computer concept, we had a very huge systems called vacuum tubes, which are as big as a maybe a house, a 30-40 site, where we live, because that was the era where we never had any concept of how to have a better computing facility. But later we have moved from that technology to the current technology what we have, and all these ICs what we're using today are result of integration. Maybe the integration of these ICs begins with small scale integration, move to large scale integration, LSI, later VLSI, very large scale integration, XLSI, extra large scale integration. Like that, these IC chips have been mounted on a single space with a multi-functionality. So that is the technology with which we're talking. Today, you can have your microprocessor of a computer, not even what you call 10 centimeters width. So that is the capability. Your entire motherboard is going to be housed in that particular place. So what was earlier vacuum tubes occupying the entire house type of structure, today have come to a small device which can do 100 times better job what vacuum tubes were doing. So if that is the case, we need to focus or understand at least the digital technology with which we are living today. And a lot of revolution is happening in this digital world, and all this digital electronics in terms of your IC will definitely provide space for you to even see better devices coming in future. So that is the basic introduction behind the digital world that is driving today. So having said that, these digital technologies, hope you're all familiar with concepts like your number systems and stuff like that. Probably those from IT, you might have seen them, you might have learned as well. Those from non-IT, probably we have a separate course on that, we can deal with that. But nevertheless, these are the concepts, or these are the what you call jargon that one should be familiar before we get into this operating system in detail, or maybe the Unix per se as a maybe an example of a real-time operating system. So with this, probably let us move to the basic core functionalities of operating system. So any doubt so far?
No, sir.
Fine. Fine. Now, so let us look at the various operating system structures with which we can look at these architectures now. So before we go to the operating system structure, so I think yesterday we touched upon multi-processing and multi-computing, right? Did we? Because we are just confused. We have offline, online class where we have discussed. Probably let me know if that concept was discussed here in this forum. There is a multi-processing and multi-computing. Have we discussed?
No, sir. No, so we are
fine. Let me quickly talk about multi-processing and multi-computing. See, multi-processing, I think these are the two words normally people get confused, because multi-processing, multi-computing, what is the difference? Let us come back to the definition of a computer, or the black box of a computer. A computer is made up of 4 minimum blocks. One is an input, an output, and a memory, and a processor. This you're all familiar with, right? So input, output, memory, processor put together, we name it as a computer. So a computer will take input, will processes that, stores into the system, we can use whenever we want, and provides the output for us. This is what precisely a computer is meaning to us. Now, when I have one single computer, it has its own boundary, it has its own limitations. It may perform to some extent, it may not perform the way I want, because it has limited resources with it. But today, we are not satisfied with the way computer is working. We want more work to be done, but in less time. If that is the case, probably we need to combine multiple processors together in parallel, probably, or multiple computers together in parallel again, to make sure that the desired efficiency is achieved in maybe processing or computing and whatever it is. In that case, a multiprocessor, how do you look at a multiprocessor from an IT perspective? A multiprocessor, now we know the processor. So what is a computer? Computer contains input, output, memory and processor. When all these four are there, I say it is a computer. What is a processor? Processor is 1/4 of your computer. It is one of the part or peripheral of a computer. So when I say processor, processor does not have memory, right? When I say computer, computer has input, output, memory and processor. So when I say computer, obviously computer comes with a memory like your 500 gigabytes or maybe 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes. But when I say processor, processor do has some memory, but that memory is very negligible in terms of KBs. Today we require GBs and TBs, so probably anything less than that is of no use for us. So that's why we say the memory that is associated with the processor is very negligible and we cannot use that. Thereby we say processor is not having a memory. But what is required here is to compute a big task, I require multiple processors. So I need to have a system where, fine, instead of having one processor, can I have a multiple processors doing work for me? If that is the case, I can combine more than one processor in pipeline, in scalar process, so that all these processors put together will give me the concept of a multi-processing. Fine, processing is okay, but after processing, where are we going to store the data? So we don't have memory here. So in order to achieve multi-processing, we will have a shared memory, meaning that a huge repository of memory is put at one place, and this memory is shared by processor 1, processor 2, processor 3, processor 4, and processor N. So when somebody says, what is multiprocessing? What you can say in one line is, multiprocessing is something which is having a shared memory. So multiprocessors comes with a shared memory concept. So shared memory is the one driving force for the multiprocessing. So right, now what is multi-computing? In the similar line, so we know the computer. Computer means it is a full-fledged entity, which is a unique entity which has both input, output, processor and memory. So memory is inbuilt for a multi-computing. So thereby memory is exclusive for the multi-computing. You need not be having any shared memory for the multi-computer. So multi-processors are a shared memory concept, multi-computing or a exclusive memory concept. That is the basic difference between a multi-processor and multi-computers. But both are expected to provide a parallel programming, because at a time I want to execute multiple programs or multiple tasks or multiple activities. Probably one computer or one processor may not provide me the solution. I need to club them. I need to group them. So to group them, probably I need to take either processors in pipeline together, or I can take computer as a standalone and still club them in a network and make sure that we get the activities done, so that I can have better efficiency. That is the difference between a multi-processing system and a multi-computer system. Any doubts till this?
No, sir.
Fine. So having said that, let us come back to this now, multi-programming and time sharing. So again, these words look similar. You should not be confused now. What we have seen is multi-processing. Multi-processing we have seen are multi-processor systems where processors are combined together with a shared memory concept. Now, what we are talking now is multi-programming. That means your single system, a computer, whole system is capable of running multiple programs at a time. Probably for that to again to have, we can have internally dual core, quad core, octa core, as we have seen in the previous class. Multiple cores can be there. Core means only CPU and associated peripherals, not everything what is there in the processor. So a small core can be put together, and like that multiple cores can be brought together and make sure that your processor can do some better work. So that is the single processor or a group of processor cores can perform multiple programs at a time. But issue here is you cannot preempt them. So once you submit them, they will be doing multiple activities. So that is done by a scheduling concept. Whereas the time sharing, which is a multitasking. So multi-programming is one. What is the batches? Once you submit, probably you may have to wait. Whereas in case of time sharing or multitasking, we have the concept of a what you call interactive computing, meaning that you submit a program, you submit a task, still you can change its input, what is a modify its output, change its priority, and thus that particular stuff can be provided. Then we say it is a multitasking. All these names pertain to the same outcome or output. What is output? At a given point of time, am I able to perform more than one task so that my system efficiency can be increased? To do that, we have a multi-processors, we have a multi-computers, we have a multi-programming, we have a multitasking. But each one of them will benefit us in a different or their own way. But all these four are different totally. They're not same. Maybe the words look confusing, the words look similar, but each one can be what you call identified by its own characteristics. So multi-processors, shared memory; multi-computers, exclusive memory; multi-programming, only on job scheduling; multitasking is a interactive computing. These are the buzzwords or keywords that you can keep in mind so that you will not have any doubt with these type of terminology. Okay, right. Fine. So these architecture styles are not new to us. They have been existing since maybe the computer was invented. So these are there with us from a beginning, what you call when the computer was given to us. But only challenge is they are not seen the penetration into the system as we are using them today. For example, if you take cloud computing, people are using cloud name for last 5-6 years. Prior to that, people were not using cloud, at least as we are using today, right? Doesn't mean that cloud computing is new to us. Cloud computing is as old as 30 to 40 years. If that is the case, then what was happening to cloud computing all these days? Then what is cloud computing basically? So without much interruption, can I do something parallelly with the by leveraging the technology that is there around me? Then probably I can look at cloud computing as one such activity. So cloud computing precisely requires greater computing facility, greater networking capability, at the end better communication. If these three can be provided, I think you can achieve cloud computing without any issue. But the challenge what we had earlier days is computing facilities were less. We never had all these multi-programming, time tasking, or multitasking capabilities. We never had a storage capabilities. They're all costly affairs, and there was no network basically. Today we are talking about 4G, 5G, which has enabled all this. So till 2G, 3G, cloud computing was not perceived by a normal person like us. Only it might be available in the industries, but not by us. Today, with the advent of 3G, 4G, and 5G that is going to come and revolutionize in future, so probably these technologies like cloud computing or maybe interactive computing, or maybe in future what we see, the data science and artificial intelligence and machine learning, they are going to be driven in a bigger scale. So what we would like to see here is, from this perspective, it is a computer, the basic mission that is going to make room for all this. But not that we never had computers, we had computers. The only thing is the capabilities to these computers were missing or could not be done. But thanks to the digital technology revolution, we are able to add those capabilities to the system. But to leverage and make it mass usage in countries like us, so probably we require additional technologies like communication, networking, and parallelly that is also evolving. Today we have got the combination of these 3-4 technologies together. Thereby we are able to see for last 4-5 years at least the type of what you call usage of this technology, and at any point of time we feel that without this technology we are nothing. So that is the perception we are getting nowadays, right? At least more so in the last 6-8 months due to pandemic. Somewhere internet is not there, we feel world has collapsed. So that was the feeling we had. That means we are so much attached to the technology, or technology has pervaded into our life. with a greater effect or penetration that we cannot live, or we feel that we cannot live at least without this technology. So that is how the technology is coming, thanks to again to the revolution what we are having in the digital market or digital side. So this is how the basic architectures are there, and these architectures will be evolving always, and in future also we can get more what you call evolution happening in the digital front. So this is per se or precisely about architecture, that is the computers with which we will be working. Now let us come to the operating system, how the operating system can be used. So operating system normally is used in the user mode or a kernel mode. So user mode is a mode which normally users like us will be utilizing, meaning that we access the system, we switch on the system. Once booting is over, we keep doing our normal routine work. What is that? We utilize the system for our day-to-day activities. Suppose suddenly you want to add a printer to the system, suddenly you want to modify certain programs which are the softwares in the system. Probably you do not have any privilege to do that. That means in user mode, we are only one side, meaning that we can only use the system to basic level. Whereas in the case of a kernel mode, as the name says, we will get into the system. Normally you might have seen in operating system, administrator is the one who is responsible to manipulate the things inside the system. Manipulation doesn't mean negative here. Manipulation means here you can add a new peripherals to the system, you can have new devices being added to the system, you can remove certain programs which are not required, you can add some programs that are required. Probably you might have experienced with your systems, whenever you wanted to add a particular software, it will say that you are not having a administrator privilege, so I cannot add this, right? So, or you do not have a administrative privilege, so I cannot delete that. So both are equally responsible. So you cannot do any manipulation with the system, you can only use as it is available. If that is the case, it is a user mode. If you can do some manipulation and correction and modification to the system as a whole, system manipulation means at hardware level, then we call it as a kernel mode. So these are the two modes normally we can have. By default, you will be having a user mode unless you have the proper credentials to log in. So it's coming to the Unix provides a very good platform where, by depending upon the type of login credentials you are going to use, straight away you will be put into the particular mode and you can start. So but kernel mode is very, very critical and crucial. If someone misuses that, you have all chances that the system will collapse. So that's how system administrator role is not easy. It is very crucial and difficult to manage. So these are the two modes rather what we have in the operation of a operating system, either user mode or kernel mode. Today we are talking about another mode called as a virtual machine mode. So virtual machine mode is nothing but where we have a computer with a native operating system. On top of that, I can host other operating systems as if all these 2-3 operating systems are residing in my system and I can run. So this virtualization has, in fact, has given room for this concept of called cloud computing and stuff like that. That means, or maybe to, for example, your Java language, people say that it is a mission independent. How is that possible? That is possible because virtualization is coming into picture. So Java virtual machine you might have heard. So that is a concept which is making Java a mission independent programming language. Why C is not that, C++ is not that? Because C and C++ are completely mission dependent. Mission means the architecture dependent or the OS dependent. Whereas Java, it doesn't matter whether you have a Linux, whether you have a Windows, whether you have a Mac, it's okay, fine. You are still able to run the Java programs. So if that is the case, we have the attributions of this virtual mission rather, which is facilitating us to have this type of facility. These are the two modes, that is a user mode, kernel mode, and off late we have a virtual machine mode as well that is coming into the picture. Okay, so any doubts at this point?
No, sir.
So this is what we have discussed so far yesterday until now, is a basic information that helps us to position OS in the system. Now we know the computer architecture, we know the how computer is made up of, how the journey of computers today, and what is the role of OS. Yesterday we have seen in detail, it is like a heart to the system. Today probably we can just touch upon the type of responsibilities or the services we expect from a particular operating system in general. So probably we have 5 to 6 services that we require from an operating system. So one may be user management. We need to manage users because every system is now multi-user concept. Multiple users will be there. Maybe the modes we have just now seen, user mode and kernel mode. Obviously 2 users are there at least, and if that is the case, how to manage them? So based on the type of flexibility, type of privileges these users are having, each user can be set with a different privilege so that we can have the system being used in that particular fashion. So environment changes are required internally, and thereby we need to provide those access management. So user management is again very important and task for the operating system to do. Later we have a file management. So we have so many files being created knowingly and unknowingly, and after some time we ourselves will forget whether we have created this file, and we'll go to the search and keep searching. But still, operating system, without having any issue, it provides, yes, this is a file you wanted, please go through that. So file management is very, very critical because we have variety of files. Probably we'll discuss and appreciate how file management is done in Unix later when you go to the Unix concepts. So user management, file management, then process management. So everything, when you give it to the execution inside the OS, it becomes a process. Every process requires a specific environment to be provided, and that is again a big concept as far as the process execution is concerned. We'll consider that again in detail with Unix. So process management is very important task altogether. Then we have a memory management. So thanks to the evolution in the digital world, we have a varieties of memory available right from the registers of a processor. We have a registers in the processor. We have cache memory. We have main memory RAM. We have RAM. We have virtual memory. We have secondary memory. We have external memory. All this memory need to be managed. So manage here means that when I save a file, the file need to be saved properly. When I want to retrieve the file, that file need to be retrieved properly. So the file management, memory management need to go hand in hand. Otherwise, you will not be able to get your file properly. So user management, file management, process management, memory management, then followed by device management. As we know, each system can be added with multiple devices, maybe your input keyboard or output monitors or printers or scanners. There are plenty of devices available. We need to attach them to the system. How does the system recognize these external bodies or external devices or peripherals? That is again need to be properly managed. Or take a case, I have 10 printers for a given system, and if I give a print, which printer to be considered? We simply select the printer and give. We feel as if we have done a great job, but internally look from the operating system point of view, it correctly chooses, selects the printer and printing gives. How it is happening? So we need to appreciate the process that goes behind our background. So this is what we are going to see from the device management. And post that, we have security. Of course, nowadays security is a very, very key and essential aspect of a operating system. Without security, people are not looking at what is security here. So anybody and everybody who can intrude into our system and use our data is not correct, is not right, is not accepted. If that is the case, how we are going to provide security? And Unix, bet you, is very, very secure system. That's why we have been promoting Unix to be part of our curriculum and Unix to be part of our learning in the laboratory. So this is how the various aspects of a operating system are there. Probably we'll touch upon in detail when you get into the future classes. So this is probably the idea with which we'll be going further now. So after having the basics of OS, now we'll get into the actual concepts of an operating system, what type of various architectures we had so far, how this OS is going to be, and this OS need to manage all this type of architecture. So one single piece of software should be capable enough to do that. That gives the input to you how difficult it is to design an operating system. And you cannot see more versions of operating system coming very soon unless there is very urgent need, or unless there is some actual issue with the given OS. And before somebody releases the OS, they do 100 types of checking, because the operating system is very core, and something goes wrong, it may kill the entire system. So this is the idea with which we are going to start our journey with operating system. Probably in the future classes, we'll go in detail about this type of activities. So that is the plan for the day. So anything you would like to discuss, probably open to you. Any doubts? Any
No, no, sir.
any issues? Anything that I could not discuss in offline and online, probably you can touch upon.
So,
Yeah,
do you have lab classes in the afternoon? Like
we have a lab, but we may be having
online lab?
online,
Offline lab.
maybe difficult. Offline only as of now.
Okay, sir.
Let us see.
So there won't be online labs for now.
Maybe difficult because I think as per the timetable, do we have online lab in the timetable?
Yes, sir.
When is that?
That is 1:45 to 3:35. Means 2 labs are there.
Is that online today or offline?
Online.
Let me check once quickly.
Yes, sir.
It is proposed online, we'll have online, otherwise it will be offline. So I need to check the timetable. 1 second. Okay, probably today is the first lab, I believe, no lab session. Right? So far labs were not conducted in the timetable. So let me check. I don't know how feasible it is to have a lab together. Probably we can have separately, one with offline or one with online. Doing together, I don't know how feasible it is going to be. But anyhow, let me check on that. So before we leave, probably let me have attendance. Akrut?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anaga Prakash.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday you were not there, Nama, Anaga?
Yes, sir. Due to some network issue,
No
I
issue, no
was
issue.
not there.
Anusha,
Yes, sir.
Bhargav?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Bhargav, you were not there yesterday, I believe.
Sir, network problem.
Okay. Rahamtullah, Darshan.
Present, sir.
Again, yesterday you were not there, no Darshan.
Yes, sir.
Divya.
Yes, sir.
Divya.
Yes, sir.
What is your full name, Divya?
KN Divya, sir.
KN. Yes, yes. Again, first class for you, Divya.
Yes, sir.
Fine. Kaushik.
Present, sir.
Yes. Again, first class for you, Kaushik.
Yes, sir. Sir, yesterday I can't attend the class, sir. Don't know. We get not yet connected, sir. Yesterday,
Which one?
sir. The computer networks, sir. And your class also, sir.
You came offline yesterday?
No, sir. I have been through online, but yet not yet connected, sir.
Okay, fine. Manish,
Present, sir.
Rashmi, Rupak,
Yes, sir.
Shadab.
Present, sir.
Shadab, again you were not there, no, yesterday? First class today.
Yes.
Yeah. Sri Vishnu,
Present, sir.
Sugandhini,
Present, sir.
first class Noma today?
Yes, sir. Yesterday, we were, most of us were waiting in the lobby, sir, but it was.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sushma, Varsha,
Yes, sir.
first class drama today?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. Anybody left here? Fine. So now probably, okay, when you will be able to reach us? Maybe next week? Offline class?
Next week.
Yeah, sure. We'll just try to connect with this. We'll also start uploading the videos. If you've missed it, we can go through that. It's better we'll have offline classes soon, because many times live interaction will help us as well to discuss more details. Okay. Anyhow, fine. We will catch up in the next class then. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.